There was this moment, right after the champagne tower collapsed, right after someone screamed, "Don't move, there's glass everywhere," where I thought, okay, maybe no one saw it was my elbow. But then I looked up, and my fiancée, standing 10 feet away in her glittery dress and 6-inch heels, was just staring at me. Not in shock, not in concern, in pure, wide-eyed, second-hand embarrassment. Like I just crapped myself in church. She didn't come to help, didn't laugh it off, didn't even blink. She just turned to her boss and said, "I kid you not. He's not usually like this. He gets nervous around people who went to college." That's when I knew I was done. Now, to be fair, I had already eaten an entire plate of crab dip alone in the corner. I had already spilled white wine on a man named Brecklin, which apparently is a real name and not a skincare brand. I had already been introduced, twice, as the guy who lives near the airport. So yeah, it wasn't going great even before the glass fountain of shame. But I really thought I could push through. I really thought I could survive the night, shake some hands, make her proud. I even wore deodorant with aluminum in it. The strong stuff. I was ready to perform. But no, this wasn't a party. This was a ritual sacrifice, and I was the goat. The setup for the slaughter. Let me rewind slightly. About 20 minutes before the glass disaster, I had been standing at this little high-top table, chewing on some kind of cheese cube that had the texture of wet drywall. People were all around me, laughing, networking, exchanging LinkedIn QR codes like it was Tinder for power couples. And there I was, Dale, with my one wrinkled shirt and my broken phone screen, pretending I knew what pre-seed valuation meant. Raya had already made 3 laps around the room by then, introducing herself like a presidential candidate, kissing cheeks, laughing just a little too loud. She brushed my arm once and said, "Keep smiling," like I was a toddler on a float in a parade. And I did, like an idiot. Until this one VP guy, some grinning golden retriever in a suit, walks up, points at me, and goes, "Oh hey, you're the guy? The one who doesn't do email." I blinked. What? And then Raya, from across the room, yells, "He thinks Slack is a type of pants." Cue laughter. Big, boisterous, echoing ballroom laughter. They laughed. She laughed. And I just stood there, cheese cube mid-chew. The only sound I made was the slow, wet crunch of betrayal. I didn't leave after the cheese moment. I should have. Any sane person would have slipped out, ordered a burger, and ghosted the entire engagement like a bad Tinder date. But I didn't. I just stood there, surrounded by a circle of smiling strangers who saw me as one thing. Her joke. I convinced myself I was being sensitive. Again, that old classic. Maybe I'm just overreacting. I kept repeating it like a meditation mantra. Maybe she was just trying to loosen me up. Maybe that's how people in corporate PR flirt with reality. Maybe if I just leaned in, played along, I could salvage the evening. And then came the PowerPoint. No one warned me there would be a team slideshow. Like an actual projector, a mic, and a seating arrangement. They called it the year in laughs, but it felt more like the roast of Dale, the accidental fiancé. I sat down next to Raya, still trying to hold her hand even though she'd pulled it away twice already. Her fingers were on her phone, texting. Her face didn't even turn toward me when the lights dimmed. The first few slides were harmless. Someone tripped over a Roomba in the office. Someone else microwaved fish and got passive-aggressively Slack-shamed for it. It was typical corporate nonsense, I guess. Then came a slide that just said, "When Raya brought a civilian to the office." And up pops a picture of me, standing awkwardly by her cubicle, holding a Tupperware of homemade pasta I dropped off for lunch one day. My mouth is open mid-sentence. My belt is slightly off-center. It's not flattering. It's not funny. It's just exposed. The room erupts. Laughter. Applause. Someone whistles. Raya puts a hand to her forehead like she's half laughing, half hiding, and then says loud enough for half the room to hear, "You told me that pic got deleted." She said it like it was my fault it existed. Like I'd somehow photobombed my own humiliation. I couldn't laugh. I didn't even fake it. I just stared at the image of myself, hunched, confused, arms cradling pasta like a child with a science fair project, while a sea of white wine and MBA degrees chuckled around me. Do you know what it feels like to become the punchline of a PowerPoint? I felt my chest hollow out, like someone had scooped the air out of my lungs and replaced it with secondhand shame. I looked over at Raya. She was smiling again, but not at me. Not with me. just smiling for the crowd. Her crowd. That's when I realized something terrifying. She liked it. She liked the attention. The contrast. I wasn't her partner tonight. I was her comedic relief, her personal gag reel. I was her office icebreaker. And the worst part? I'd spent the last 2 months thinking about what color suit I should wear to our wedding. After the slideshow, people started approaching us like we were characters on a reality show. One guy clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Dude, you're such a good sport." Another woman leaned in and whispered, "I'd never let my man see the inside of our office." "You're brave." Brave. Like I'd just survived a war instead of being silently roasted over goat cheese canapes. And Raya? She kept sipping her drink, occasionally giving me this small, scripted smile. Like I was a vendor who'd delivered the wrong dessert, but she didn't want to make a scene. So I went to the bathroom. I stood in that echoing white-tiled room, staring into a mirror lit like a police interrogation, and I asked myself something I hadn't dared to all year. Does she actually like me? Not love. Not lust. Not tolerate when it's convenient. Actually like me? Because if this was her way of showing it, I had no idea who I'd been engaged to. And just when I was about to leave the bathroom and possibly tell her we should call it a night, I got a text from her. It said, "Where are you? They want us for karaoke." Karaoke. As if the night hadn't already killed me once. And reader, I wish that karaoke moment was just embarrassing. But what happened next? That was the moment I snapped. I should have left after the PowerPoint. I should have taken my velvet blazer, my shattered dignity, and Ubered myself straight into therapy. But no, I walked back into that ballroom like a man who still believed there was something left to salvage. My phone buzzed again. "Raya, they want us to do karaoke. Come on, don't be weird." The word weird stung. That's what she always called me when she didn't want to say embarrassing, or out of place, or beneath her. I stuffed the phone back in my pocket and walked toward the makeshift stage like a condemned man heading for the guillotine. When I got there, Raya was already at the mic, standing in a glittering halo of LED lights and cocktail-fueled confidence. She was laughing with the DJ, some guy in a sequined vest and too much hair product, and flipping through song selections on a tablet. When she saw me, she raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow and said, "There he is. Took you long enough. You ready to redeem yourself?" Redeem myself. I laughed, because I thought she was joking. But she wasn't. I realized that as soon as she turned back to the mic and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "So this next one's for all the girls who accidentally get engaged to men who think Coldplay is high-energy music." Laughter. Again. I hadn't even opened my mouth, and I was already the punchline. She picked a song. Not one we both liked. Not something inside jokey or sweet. No. She picked "You're So Vain," the actual Carly Simon song. And here's the kicker. She dedicated it to me. This one's for Dale, who literally thought we were going to Cancun for our honeymoon, even though I've said 1,000 times I hate sand. I felt my stomach turn cold. It wasn't even just what she said, it was the way she said it. Like she was performing. Not to me, but to them. The co-workers. The audience. Her boss. Like humiliating me had become part of her brand. She sang the first verse like she meant every word of it. Not just singing, belting, smiling, even pointing at me during the "you probably think this song is about you" line. People cheered. A few clapped in rhythm. The woman next to me whispered, "She's got pipes, huh?" I just nodded, trying to swallow the growing lump in my throat. When it was my turn, the DJ offered me the mic like I was about to deliver a TED Talk. I stared at the screen. None of the songs were mine. Nothing I knew. I panicked and picked the first title that looked vaguely familiar, Mr. Brightside. Not romantic. Not clever. Just loud and fast, and maybe if I yelled it hard enough, it would drown out the mortifying echo of my life. I sang horribly. No rhythm. Off-key. My voice cracked halfway through the second verse, and my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the mic. I saw Raya filming it. Actually filming me. I could see her phone screen. She had it tilted just right, smiling, catching every sad detail. And then she did it. The final twist of the knife. She turned to her friend, some tall guy with a jawline like a sculpture, and said, "This is what happens when you date outside your network." He laughed. He laughed so hard he spilled his drink on the carpet. I didn't finish the song. I set the mic down. Not slammed it. Just set it. Quietly. And I walked off the stage. I didn't look at her. I didn't look at anyone. I went back to the coat check, handed them my ticket, and waited. Velvet blazer and all. The guy behind the counter didn't say a word. He just handed me my coat like he'd seen this scene play out before. And still, I didn't leave. I stood by the exit like a ghost, watching the party, watching her work the room, laugh like nothing happened. My fiancée, my future wife, the woman I thought I was building a life with. I pulled out my phone, opened our shared calendar, stared at the event titled Venue Tour, Saturday at 11 a.m. And then I deleted it. No drama, no announcement. I just stood there in the shadows, quietly removing pieces of a life I wasn't part of anymore. But that wasn't the end. Because 10 minutes later, she came looking for me. Not to apologize. Not to check if I was okay. No. She came to tell me to be cool in front of her coworkers. What she didn't expect, what I didn't expect, was what came out of my mouth next. She found me near the lobby fireplace. Not because she was worried. Not because she missed me. But because I was making the evening look weird. Those were her exact words. Dale, come on. You're making it weird. I remember the way her heels clicked against the marble floor. Every step felt like a countdown. She didn't sit next to me. She just stood there, arms crossed, scanning the room behind me while she talked. Her voice was calm, performative, like she was reciting a speech she'd written in her head days ago. You're spiraling again, she said. Can we just not do this here? I'm trying to make partner by Q3, and tonight actually matters. That's when I realized something I hadn't let myself admit until that very second. I wasn't her person. I was her prop. She didn't see me. Not really. She saw how I looked sitting next to her. How I sounded when I stumbled through conversations with her colleagues. How I brought normalcy to her curated high-gloss life. She used to call me grounding. I thought that meant I was stable. But now I think she just meant low voltage. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked up at her and said, I think you forgot who I am. She blinked. Not because she was surprised, but because I'd said something that required actual effort to decode. That's how distant we'd become. I could see her doing the emotional math, trying to figure out if she was supposed to be offended, defensive, or just bored. You're being dramatic, she said, already turning her shoulders slightly away, like the conversation was an app she wanted to minimize. You're just not used to these kinds of events. I get it. But this isn't about you. It's about showing up for me. No, I replied, quieter now. Showing up would have been supporting you, not letting you turn me into the evening's opening act. That caught her off guard. For a second, she hesitated. I could see the flicker of something like recognition in her face. Not regret, just the brief awareness that maybe she'd gone too far. But it vanished just as fast. Her voice dipped, cold and deliberate. Dale, do not make a scene. A scene. That's what she was afraid of. Not hurting me. Not the slow, corrosive erosion of whatever love used to be between us. She was afraid I'd embarrass her. In front of her coworkers. In front of people who had never once said my name correctly. And that was the moment. Not a shout. Not a slap. Just a quiet internal fracture. The kind you don't come back from. I stood up slowly. She thought I was going to follow her back inside. Smile. Apologize. Play the part. But instead, I reached into my jacket, pulled out the small velvet box I had kept with me. Yes, even that night, and handed it to her. She didn't take it at first. Just stared. Open it, I said. She opened the box. Inside was her engagement ring. Cleaned. Polished. Still warm from my chest pocket. She looked at me, expression unreadable, and whispered, What are you doing? I'm giving you the last thing tying us together in public, I said, since you already let go of it in private. She laughed. Short, sharp. A defense mechanism. Dale, be serious. I am. She blinked again. That same blink. The one she gave me when I spilled wine on her white rug, or when I ordered the wrong takeout, or when I said I liked old Adam Sandler movies. The blink of disbelief that someone like me could possibly not be grateful for someone like her. And then I walked away. No fireworks. No audience. Just me, heading out into the cold December night with my phone on airplane mode, and my blazer smelling faintly of spilled champagne and bad decisions. I took the train home. Didn't call anyone. Just sat there, watching my own reflection in the dark window, asking myself a question I'd never thought I'd have to ask. Did she ever actually love me? Or did I just fit the brand? But the night wasn't over. Because 24 hours later, I found out something else. Something I wasn't supposed to see. A shared album. A hidden photo. Something taken weeks ago, and not by me. And that, as it turns out, changed everything. The apartment was too quiet when I got home. Not the kind of quiet that calms you, but the kind that feels like something's missing. The kind that feels like someone just left and forgot to shut the door. I dropped my phone and keys onto the kitchen counter, kicked off my shoes, and stood there for a long moment. Coat still on, staring into the dark. It was 2:12 a.m. I hadn't eaten since the shrimp skewers at the party. I wasn't hungry. My chest was tight, and my stomach kept fluttering like it hadn't caught up to the rest of me. I didn't feel free. I didn't feel strong. I felt like a man who just walked away from a fire only to realize he'd been burning for months without noticing. There was a strange comfort in the routine, though. I brushed my teeth. I washed my face. I sat on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed, and opened my laptop like I was checking in on an old wound. I didn't plan on doing anything. I just wanted distraction, something stupid and safe. I figured I'd scroll through photos, maybe delete some random junk, anything to avoid thinking about how quickly everything had fallen apart. I clicked on the Photos app and opened an album Raya had shared with me a few months ago. It was titled, in that annoying passive-aggressive way she liked to name things, Nice Things We Might Forget. There were over 300 pictures in there, mostly harmless. Coffee shops, airport selfies, a blurry photo of me asleep on the couch with popcorn spilled across my chest. But as I scrolled, something caught my eye, a photo I didn't recognize. It was tucked between our trip to Portland and a friend's wedding, time-stamped only 3 weeks ago. That didn't make sense. We hadn't taken any new pictures together recently. I clicked it. At first glance, it looked innocent. Just Raya and some co-workers sitting around a long bar table, holding fancy cocktails, smiling. But my eyes caught on someone. A guy sitting far too close to her. His hand, casual but unmistakable, resting on the back of her chair. She was leaning into him, head tilted just slightly. That same grin she used to give me when we were alone. I stared at it for a long time. Then I clicked right. The next photo was worse. This time it was just the two of them. He had her phone in his hand, taking a selfie while she kissed his cheek. Her hand on his chest. His other hand around her waist. There was no caption, no context. Just that awful still moment, quietly waiting to be discovered. I felt like I was staring at a crime scene. And the victim was me. I didn't react at first. Not in the dramatic way I always imagine people do when they discover betrayal. I didn't scream. Didn't smash anything. My hands just went cold. My spine stiffened. I kept clicking, hoping, stupidly, desperately, that maybe I was misunderstanding it. That maybe there'd be a follow-up shot of the whole group together. That maybe it was some kind of inside joke. That maybe I could explain it away. But there was nothing. No group photo. No third wheel. Just her. Just him. Just them. I looked at the timestamp again. November 19th. I remember that date. It was the night I stayed home to work late on her cousin's wedding gift. The custom frame I spent 3 evenings building from scratch. She said she had a team happy hour and would be home late. I told her I loved her before she left. She didn't say it back. I thought it was just one of her moods. Now I know better. I closed the laptop, but the image was already burned into the backs of my eyes. I lay down on the couch, blazer still on, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to process it. What bothered me the most wasn't even the kiss. It was the ease of it. The way she looked in those photos, comfortable, familiar. Like this wasn't a one-time mistake. Like she had done this before. Like she wasn't confused or guilty. She was home. I thought about all the signs I ignored. The late nights. The texting under the covers. The sudden surge in gym memberships and new skincare routines. I remembered how she started calling me Bud, sometimes when she was annoyed, like I was a pet she had to feed out of obligation. I thought about the slideshow, the karaoke, the mic in her hand, the fact that she had filmed me and smiled. It wasn't just disrespect. It was detachment. I wasn't her partner. I was the final accessory she hadn't gotten around to replacing yet. But that was about to change. Because if she wanted to parade me in front of her colleagues like a court jester, if she wanted to strip me of dignity one social interaction at a time, then fine. But she wasn't going to do it quietly. Not anymore. I wasn't going to break something or scream into the void. I had a better idea. Something sharper. Something that would leave a mark, without ever raising my voice. She was going to feel what it was like to be seen, not applauded, not adored, but exposed. And I knew exactly when to do it. Because we still had brunch reservations the next morning. With her parents. By the time morning came, I had stopped shaking. Not because I felt better, but because my body had run out of adrenaline and switched to something colder. I didn't sleep. I lay there all night on the couch, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling with the image of that photo burning behind my eyelids. At some point, a new thought crept in, something strange and calm. If she was willing to humiliate me in public, maybe it was time for me to stop protecting her in private. Maybe it was time to let the mask slip in front of the people she least wanted to disappoint. Not coworkers, not bosses, her parents. The brunch had been scheduled for weeks, a soft little meeting to finalize wedding details. They'd booked a sunlit corner at a trendy cafe downtown, the kind of place with reclaimed wood tables and overpriced mimosas. Raya had been looking forward to it, bragging about how her parents just adored me, how they thought I was such a refreshing match for her. I used to like her parents. They were polite, inquisitive, the kind of people who talked about wine like it was a personality. But that morning, when I got dressed and buttoned my shirt, all I felt was a dull, deliberate resolve. I arrived early. I always do. They weren't there yet, but the server recognized the reservation and led me to the table. I sat facing the door so I could see them walk in. My coffee went cold before they arrived. When they did, they were all smiles, her mother in a powder blue coat, her father in a blazer and a casual scarf, and then Raya trailing behind them, sunglasses hiding her eyes even though it wasn't that bright out. She looked hungover, tired, but still radiant in that infuriating way people like her can be even when they're falling apart. She kissed her parents' cheeks, set her bag down, and avoided my gaze. She hadn't texted me once since the party. No apology, no explanation. Just silence. They ordered drinks. Small talk fluttered around like nervous birds. Traffic, the weather, a new restaurant opening in the West End. I answered politely, even smiled when appropriate, but underneath it all there was a steady drumbeat in my head. Tell them the truth. Not to destroy her, but to stop being her alibi. To stop playing the harmless, normal guy while she curated her double life. When the server left to get our food, her father asked me about the honeymoon plans. Raya says you're thinking about Europe now? He said, looking pleased. Sounds romantic. I looked at her. She stared down at her napkin. I could have played along. I could have nodded and lied. But I didn't. I put my coffee cup down, leaned back, and said, actually, there's not going to be a honeymoon. There's not going to be a wedding. The words landed like a glass shattering on a tile floor. Her parents froze. Raya's head snapped up, eyes flashing behind her sunglasses. Excuse me, she said, her voice tight and sharp. I stayed calm. I'm calling off the engagement, I said, and for the first time in months my voice didn't shake. I should have done it last night, but I didn't want to make a scene at your party. I figured your parents deserved to hear it from me in person. Her mother's face drained of color. Her father cleared his throat, searching for something to say, but finding nothing. Raya took off her sunglasses and glared at me. You're doing this here? She hissed, barely moving her lips. In front of them? Yes, I said, because I'm done being a prop. I'm done smiling while you tear me apart for sport. And I'm done protecting you from the truth. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look at her parents. I just looked at her. Her mother tried to intervene, a soft, maybe we should. But Raya cut her off. Dale, what are you talking about? She demanded. You're being insane. I didn't flinch. Check your shared album, I said. Look at November 19th. Look at the man whose cheek you kissed while I was home building a frame for your cousin's wedding present. Look at the photos you forgot to hide before you posted your slideshow about me. Her face went pale, then red. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her parents turned to her, confused, silent. She stammered something about inside jokes and team building, but her voice cracked halfway through. It didn't matter what she said. The damage was already done. Her mask had slipped. For a brief second, no one at the table moved. It was just the four of us in a suspended moment, sunlight spilling across the table, mimosas sweating in their glasses, and the sound of a fork clinking somewhere in the distance. And in that quiet, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. I stood up. I put my napkin on the table, still folded. You can keep the ring, I said. You'll need something to show off at work. Then I walked out. No shouting. No theatrics. Just footsteps on the polished floor, past the brunch crowd, out into the street where the cold air felt like a baptism. As I walked away, my phone buzzed. A text from her. Just one word. Wait. I didn't. But she wasn't done with me yet. And I wasn't done with the truth. It took her exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes to show up at my door. I knew she would. That's the kind of person Raya is. She doesn't lose things. Not keys. Not arguments. Not people. She keeps everything in neatly labeled boxes, and I just jumped out of mine without asking permission. The knock wasn't loud. It was the knock of someone who still believed they had leverage. I let it ring out twice before I opened the door. She was standing there, still in her brunch clothes, coat half on, phone in hand, red-faced not from crying, but from scrambling to control the narrative. She didn't ask to come in. She just walked past me like she still lived here, and maybe in her head, she did. I can't believe you embarrassed me like that, she said. No hello. No apology. No can we talk. Just straight to the defense. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it. You embarrassed yourself, I replied. I just stopped cleaning up after it. She spun around, eyes blazing. That wasn't cheating. You're being manipulative. You don't even know the context. You're right, I said calmly. I don't know the context. And you never bothered to explain it until you got caught. She opened her mouth, shut it, then tried again. It was just a drink. It was harmless. You know how the industry is. We're close. We build rapport. It doesn't mean anything. I stared at her. Then why didn't you tell me? Silence. It was strange. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel anything, really. Just tired. Like I'd been holding up a house of cards and finally let gravity take over. She sighed and dropped onto the couch. So what now? You're just done? After all this time, after everything? I was done the second you stopped respecting me, I said. I just didn't want to admit it. There was a pause. Then she said the quiet part out loud. The part she probably didn't even realize she believed until now. You were never supposed to be permanent. I blinked. She looked away immediately, as if saying it had cracked something in her. I mean, I didn't mean it like that. Her voice faltered. You were supposed to be safe? You were supposed to be the normal one. The quiet one. I nodded. I was. That's exactly who I was. And then I said the thing I hadn't planned on saying, the thing that came out not as revenge, but as liberation. I've been writing it down. The whole thing. Every bit of it. She looked up. What? I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and turned the screen toward her. An open document, pages and pages of it. Not just about the party. Not just about the brunch. But about all of it. The subtle way she'd chipped away at me. The manipulation buried in compliments. The way she curated me into a safe accessory to show off to people who made her feel small. I'd written it all. Not to destroy her, but to understand myself. To remember that I wasn't crazy. That this had happened. I never wanted to hurt you, I said. But I also never wanted to disappear inside someone else's life. She stood slowly. So what? You're going to post it? Get karma points? Make me look like the villain? I'm not going to make you look like anything, I said. You did that part yourself. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the person in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she only knew the Dale who apologized too much and laughed when he didn't think the joke was funny. She grabbed her bag. You'll regret this. No, I said. I regret waiting this long. And then she was gone. Just like that. She didn't slam the door. She didn't cry. She just left, and with her, the weight I'd been carrying finally lifted. Later that night, I stared at the document again. I didn't post it. Not yet. But I saved it. Titled it something plain. Something quiet. Notes on disappearing. And then I did something else. Something I never expected I'd do. I opened a blank page. And I started writing from the beginning. Not the part where she humiliated me. The part where I stopped existing. I didn't publish the story. Not then. I kept editing it. Rewriting pieces, cutting paragraphs that sounded like revenge, and replacing them with reflection. I didn't want to tell the story to punish her. I wanted to tell it so I could finally see myself clearly. Not through her eyes, or her friend's eyes, or in the warped mirror of an office slideshow, but as I really was. A man who let himself shrink to fit into someone else's story, and who finally decided to leave. For a while, nothing happened. The days were slow and soft. I returned the wedding venue deposit. I deleted the Pinterest board full of suits and song choices. I boxed up the gifts we hadn't opened and dropped them off at a donation center. Every gesture, no matter how small, Felt like peeling off an old name tag I didn't remember agreeing to wear. I started walking in the mornings. Just 10 blocks to nowhere and back. Coffee in hand. No music. Just footsteps, traffic, birds. For the first time in months, my own thoughts didn't sound like static. I caught myself smiling at things, a corgi in a backpack, a busker playing violin at 7 a.m., a dad trying and failing to juggle 2 toddlers, and a latte. Life, in all its weird little honesty, kept happening. And then one morning, 2 weeks later, I bumped into someone at the coffee shop I hadn't seen in almost 4 years. Her name was Marianne. We used to work together before I took the desk job. She had a sharp wit, wore earrings shaped like typewriters, and used to tease me for drinking decaf like it was a personal betrayal. We'd always had an easy rhythm, the kind that makes time feel short. Back then, I was too afraid to ask her out. I told myself I was too boring, too safe. She smiled when she saw me. Dale. I laughed. Still decaf. She grinned. Some things never change. We sat down. Just coffee. Just catching up. But something clicked. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet click, like a door finally unlocking from the inside. She asked about my life. And I told her. Not about Raya, not at first, but about writing again, about walking, about learning to like silence. She didn't interrupt. She didn't analyze. She just listened. And when I finished, she said, "Sounds like you're starting over." "I am," I said. "And for once, I'm actually in the first chapter." That night, I opened the document again. Not the one called Notes on Disappearing. A new one. I titled it How to Begin. It didn't start with heartbreak. It didn't end with blame. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. About the strange, terrifying beauty of waking up one day and realizing that losing someone who didn't love you right might be the best thing that ever happened. I didn't need to post the old story, because I was finally ready to live a new one.